Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with today's section of Benny's Bats for Monday, August 3rd. The idea of the Benny's Bats section is we like to go through each pitcher that's on the mound today, figure out what that pitcher's weakness is, and then figure out which guys on the other team profile to do the best against them. This is a good way to start your short list to get your research started for your daily fantasy MLB games, and so far it's been working out pretty well, so let's get into it. We got a 10-game slate tonight. Only a couple teams that are off, so most of the teams are on the mound. We do have a lot of good pitchers going up. There's 5 or 6 aces that we're not going to be targeting against, which means that we're going to be looking at most of the bats in some of the other games. So the first guy we're going to talk about is Eddie Butler. Eddie Butler is a pitcher for Colorado. He's at home in Coors Field. Left-handed bats have hit .333 against them with 5 homers in 31 innings. And right-handed bats have hit .294 against them with 4 homers in 33 innings. So you could basically look at right and left-handed bats on the Seattle team. I think they're going to be very popular. The only guy who really stands out based on the numbers is Nelson Cruz. Cruz has a .383 WOBA with a .240 ISO score. Hit another home run yesterday. But basically, after you get by Cruz, if you're looking for guys that you want to use on that Seattle team, there is nobody who has over a .340 WOBA or a 195 ISO score on the team besides Nelson Cruz. So there really aren't a ton of guys who stand out and jump off the page at you. Like I said, Cruz is probably the top option. A guy like Franklin Gutierrez has been hitting pretty well lately. He's somebody you can look at. Cano's still hurt. You might want to take a look at a guy like Seager in a lefty-righty matchup. But again, there aren't a lot of guys who really stand out based on the numbers outside of Cruz. Next guy we can talk about is Tyler Wilson. Wilson's going up against Oakland. He has limited innings pitched in the majors so far, but he's allowed left-handed bats to hit .297 against them. So the two guys who stand out on Oakland. Now, Oakland has been ice cold lately, so there really isn't a ton of guys that you want to target. That offense it just doesn't look right now. Their big bats aren't hitting. The guys in the top of the order aren't getting on. The guys in the bottom of the order aren't doing anything. Other than that explosion they had the other day that was led by Brett Lowry's 4-for-4 game with the home run and all the RBIs, they haven't been putting up a lot of runs at all lately. The two guys who stand out on the numbers are Josh Reddick, who has a .374 WOBA with a 197 ISO, and Stephen Vogt, who has a .360 WOBA and a 215 ISO. Now, both of these guys had WOBAs up above 400 and ISOs much higher up in the 200s, only about 2-3 weeks ago. That's how cold this offense has been. Everybody on this offense has seen their numbers take a hit. So I don't know if I really, even though Wilson looks like a guy that you want to target against, I don't know how many bats I want to take against them because they just haven't been good bats so far on Oakland. This game is in Oakland, so it's not a great hitter's park either, so there really isn't a ton of upside with it. Next guy we can talk about is Zach Godley. Godley has really struggled against left-handed bats, both in his limited innings in the majors and in his minor league innings. That has been the way to go and get him. So the only guy who really sticks out on that Washington team against right-handed pitching, that's a left-handed bat, is Bryce Harper. 481 WOBA, 366 ISO. So his numbers are phenomenal against right-handed pitching. He's definitely somebody you should look at. But he's been cold lately. He went 3 for 13 in that series against the Mets. Although in his defense, he went up against 3 good pitchers in Harper, DeGrom, and Noah Syndergaard, which is, really, really tough for anybody who has to go up against that trio. Let's see. On a site, his price has actually come down in places. He's actually cheaper than Nelson Cruz on a couple sites today. I know I was making lineups this morning over on Fantasy Feud, and I was surprised to see that Harper was, I think, the 3rd or 4th most expensive outfielder over there. He's actually cheaper than Nelson Cruz is today. So I think you're going to see that. I think on DraftKings it's the same way, mostly because Cruz is getting that bump because he's playing in Colorado. So if you want to try to go away from the grain in the tournament today, that Nelson Cruz playing in Colorado is going to be incredibly popular. I think Bryce Harper could be a guy that you could look at, to break out of his slump today. Let's see. The next guy we can talk about is Mike Folty-Newitz. Folty-Newitz pitches for Atlanta. Left-handed bats are hitting .336 against them with a 1.81 whip. Right-handed bats are hitting .282 against them with a 1.39 whip. So this is a guy that you can definitely stack up against. The game is in Atlanta, though, so it's a pretty decent pitcher's park. It's not a place I'd look for a ton of runs to be scored. But that San Francisco offense is much better away from home. You got guys like Buster Posey at a .392 WOBA, 175 ISO. Hunter Pence, 382 WOBA, 208 ISO. I think both of them are going to be in play. You can even look at guys like Matt Duffy, 373, 169. Brandon Belt, 368, 213. So he's the guy with a little bit of power in that lineup. And even a guy like Joe Panic, 360, 141. You basically, the one guy who I'm not thrilled with in that San Francisco team is Angel Pagan. So I would skip over him as the leadoff batter. But you could put guys like Panic, who usually bats second, Duffy, Pence, who else do we say? Posey, and Belt. You can put those guys who are basically the 2 through 6 hitters in that order into your lineup and stack them up today. And I think you're probably going to get a pretty good return out of that. Like I said, Faulty Newitz isn't somebody that scares us away. And I think that you can throw the righties and the lefties against them, which is something you look for when you're trying to stack up a bunch of bats, is whether you can take guys from both sides of the plate or if a pitcher's dominant to one side. Faulty Newitz isn't really dominant to either side of the plate. 333 and 282 is his lefty and righty splits. So you'll take that. Those are the guys you kind of want to target against. Next guy we can talk about is Doug Fister. Fister's really struggled with right-handed bats this year. 367 batting average allowed, 1.78 whip. He doesn't give up a lot of home runs, though, which is the one thing that helps him. So, you know, some of those home run hitters might get a little bit of a downgrade today. But you got guys like Wellington Castillo, 433 WOBA, 312 is his ISO score. He's still cheap on a lot of sites. On Fantasy Feud, I know I fit him in there. I didn't think he was too expensive. Over on FanDuel, I think he's still in a pretty solid price. His price on DraftKings isn't too overly expensive. And on Aces, he is getting a tad pricey. So, you know, again, depending on what site you're playing on, I think he's a good option for a catcher. He does have a lot of power, and he's been smashing in righty-righty matchups this year. So you definitely want to consider him. The other righty-righty guy who's been smashing is Paul Goldschmidt. I mean, he's in play just about every day. It doesn't matter the matchup. It doesn't matter the ballpark. It doesn't matter, you know, who's pitching for the other team. He's got a 426 WOBA. He's got a 232 ISO score. So this is actually his worst split going righty-righty, and his numbers are still pretty elite that I still think he's an option that you can look at today. The last guy is David Peralta. Peralta's the one left-handed bat that hits up top of that order for Arizona. 369 WOBA, 228 ISO score, so he's somebody else that you can look at today. He's pretty cheap. I know on DraftKings he was really cheap the other day. He was like 32 or 3,300. If he's down in that range again, I definitely think he's somebody you can look at against Fister. Let's see. We got Willie Peralta. Peralta's another one of those guys that you can stack bats up against. 294 batting average to left-handed bats, 5 home runs in 32 innings. 287 to right-handed bats with 3 home runs in 30 innings. So basically righties and lefties have been hitting them well. You can use guys from either side of the plate. The problem is they're playing San Diego, who really doesn't have a whole bunch of guys that you ever want to target. Justin Upton is obviously the best option, 357 WOBA, 215 ISO score. If Brett Wallace is in there today, he's got a 385 WOBA with a 167 ISO score. So those are really the only 2 guys that I would even consider on that San Diego team. Again, it's just, you know, they're getting the ballpark bump. This game is in Milwaukee, so they are getting a ballpark bump. Could be a little better situation for them, but that San Diego team hasn't hit at all. So you really don't want to be going crazy targeting a whole bunch of guys on that roster. Let's see. Next guy we got is Bartolo Colon. Left-handed bats have been the way to get at Colon this year. 316 average, 8 home runs in 56 innings. The only guy who I really like on that Miami team is Derek Dietrich. Dietrich's got a 368 WOBA with a 244 ISO number. So he's really the one guy that I would like to see. They hit him clean up the other day. He's been in the 4 and the 5 spot lately, so he's in a good RBI position, a little bit higher up in the order. Again, you know, you can look at a guy like an Ichiro, you can look at a guy like a Yelich, some of those left-handed bats that they have on the team up there, even maybe like a Justin Bour if he's in there. But Yelich and Ichiro don't really have a ton of power, so I'm not really looking to target them unless they're really, really cheap somewhere. And even Bour is basically a feast or famine kind of guy. If he gets a hold of one of those weak Cologne fastballs and hits a home run, he'll be a good bet for you. But I could also easily see him striking out 3 times and giving you a negative number. Excuse me, if you're playing on a site like a FanDuel or a Fantasy Aces where they take numbers away for the strikeouts. Next guy we can talk about is Jesse Chavez. Chavez has been giving it up to left-handed bats, 286 batting average, 7 home runs in 58 innings. So I guess you got to look at a guy like Chris Davis, who's been pretty hot lately. Davis has 5 home runs in his last 9 games, 350 WOBA. He's got a huge 270 ISO score, though. So we've always known that Davis has been a power guy, and he's going to have some power in this matchup. But again, this game is in Oakland, not an easy park to hit balls out of. So I would temper my expectations with Davis. I looked around on the sites today, and his price is pretty expensive. He's gotten priced up because he's been hitting all these home runs. So I don't know, excuse me, I don't know if he's somebody that I definitely want in my lineups. The other guy you can look at, even though it's a righty-righty matchup, is Manny Machado. Machado's got a 390 WOBA with a 241 ISO score. Again, he hasn't been hitting great. He's kind of cooled off a little bit lately, but he did have a decent series over the weekend. Smashed a home run in the one game, had a couple hits in another game. So he might be getting his swing back. It might be somebody that you can look to put back in your rosters. The problem I have with Machado is he's priced up because he has been playing so well, where he's, basically one of the most expensive options, not just at third base, but one of the most expensive hitters you can put in your lineup, period, today. Excuse me one sec. Okay, so the next guy we can look at is Matt Cain. Matt Cain has a higher average allowed to left-handed bats, 2013 to 2015, but he's given up more home runs to right-handed bats over that same that same time frame. Really, the only guy in Atlanta that I'd be looking to use against him is Freddie Freeman. Freeman has a 388 WOBA, 248 ISO number. He's by far the best hitter on that Braves team. Now that he's back from injury, he's somebody that we basically got to consider almost every day. Again, the problem with Freeman is not a great hitter's ballpark in Atlanta, and he's priced up. He's already back up to being one of the top 5 or 6 priced first basemen on almost every site. If you can find him cheap still somewhere, by all means, I think he's a pretty good play, and you can roll him out there. But if you got to pay up, over 5,000 on DraftKings, close to 4,000 on FanDuel for him, 90 or 100,000 on Fantasy Feud, I just don't think he makes a whole bunch of sense if he's one of the top options that you have to pay up for. A first base option that I do like, we got Tom Kohler going for Miami. Left-handed bats have been the way to get at him. He's only given up a 239 batting average, but he's given up 12 home runs to left-handed bats in less than 60 innings of work. So I think you got to look at a guy like Lucas Duda, who's been absolutely on fire lately. He's got 9 home runs in his last 8 games. He's got 3 multi-homer games over that span, 352 WOBA, 237 ISO number. So if you're looking for a left-handed bat that can hit a home run, I definitely think Duda is that guy for you. Another guy you can look at whose numbers have been really good against right-handers this year is Curtis Granderson. Granderson's got a 383 WOBA, 221 ISO number. Jacked the home run in a lefty-righty matchup the other day, so I definitely think he's somebody else that you can look at. Duda and Granderson are probably the only 2 Mets I would put in my lineup, but I know a lot of people don't like playing Mets, so I think both of these guys go low-owned, and I think they're both in a pretty good spot here against Kohler. Let's see, we got Nate Carnes. Carnes has allowed left-handed bats to hit 251 against them, so left-handers have the higher average, but he has given up 10 home runs in 55 innings to right-handed bats. So you got guys on both sides that are in play. You want to use the average hitters for left-handed bats, and you want to use the guys that have home run power from the right side. So I think Jose Abreu is that right-sided home run power guy. He's got a 373 WOBA with a 211 ISO number. Had a pretty good series. The last couple series that he's been going, that White Sox team's been scoring some runs, and he's the guy that's been driving a lot of them in, along with Melky Cabrera. So I think Abreu is definitely somebody you can look at. Adam Eaton on top of that order, somebody else you can look at, 368 WOBA, 181 ISO. Again, he's been hitting better. He's been leading off for that offense, and he's been starting up all these run-scoring rallies that they've been having. So I think that he's another guy that you can put in there. Still pretty cheap on a lot of sites. Hasn't gotten up to that elite value, elite price level. So I think that he's still somebody you can roll out. The last guy is Melky Cabrera. Again, the problem I have with Cabrera is his price has jumped up because he's been absolutely on fire. He's got an RBI in like 9 of his last 10 games. He's got like 17 or 18 RBIs over that stretch. Has a hit in almost every one of those games. So he's been hot. He's been somebody who's returning value. And the sites all notice it because his price has gone up on literally every site that I looked at. His price has gone up from where it was a week ago. I mean, he was min price on FanDuel, maybe 2-3 weeks back. And now he's, almost $4,000. Same thing with Feud, same thing with Aces. Even over on DraftKings, he's up to like 42 or 4,300, which is not cheap. When he was 31, 35, 36 on DraftKings, you use him to this top price range. You gotta kind of hold off a little bit. Let's see. The next guy I want to look at, we got Colby Lewis. Left-handed bats are hitting 271 against him. 8 home runs, 78 innings pitched. He's given up 16 total home runs this year. He's pitching in Texas today against Houston, which is a home run hitting team. And it's been pretty hot down there, which means that when it gets hot in Texas, the balls start flying out of that ballpark. So I could see him giving up a couple home runs today. A couple guys you might want to look at to hit that home run. Hank Conger has been on fire right now. He's got a 498 WOBA with a 390 ISO number against right-handed pitching. So, I mean, really, it's only been about 70, 75 at bats, but how do you not take a look at that guy at least? If he's a cheap catching option and he's in there in the middle of the order somewhere, I think he's somebody that you can play today, especially as a cheap salary saver for the catcher position. We're going to go with my man Preston Tucker again. You guys know I love this guy. He's a left-handed bat that hits right-handed pitching very well. His WOBA is 396, his ISO is 272, and the average player still doesn't know who he is. So he's been a guy that's been killing right-handed pitching. He's been paying off pretty well. He did have a rough game over the weekend where a lot of people were on him, so I also think you're going to get a little bit of that never again crowd. But this guy's numbers are just way, way too good, and his price is way, way too cheap on all these sites to ignore somebody in this good of a matchup, in this good of a spot. The other guy you can look at is Carlos Correa, 371 WOBA, 246 ISO number, which are huge power numbers that you're getting out of a shortstop. There aren't many guys that are going to give you that from the position. Now, again, he's either the most expensive or the second most expensive option at this point on just about every single site. So you're not getting him cheap, but again, you're also not getting that production from a lot of other shortstops. We do prefer Correa against left-handed pitching, but again, the numbers that he has are good enough that, you know, he's even better than some guys who are in their preferred split matchup, meaning that he's somebody who's definitely in play today. Next guy we can talk about is Jose Quintana. Quintana has been dominant against left-handed bats, so don't even think about rolling any left-handed bats against this guy. His batting average against is like 200 against lefties, but against righties, his batting average against is 297. So it's basically almost a 100-point difference between the splits from the right and left side with him. He's given up only 9 home runs in 103 innings, so not a ton of home runs to right-handed bats. But again, that 297 average is pretty high. There's a couple guys on Tampa Bay you got to look at. Logan Forsythe has been smashing left-handed pitching all year. 387 WOBA, 301 ISO number, even though he had a rough 0-for-4 game the other day. I think it was yesterday against another lefty. He's definitely somebody who I still think you want to roll out there when they face left-handed pitching. Bats clean up in that order, usually has a chance to knock in some runs as well. His teammate, Evan Longoria, also been very good against lefties throughout his entire career. Last year, Longo versus a lefty was almost like an automatic play. So I think that today is another day you can roll him out. He's got a 370 WOBA, 152 ISO score, so he hasn't been hitting for a lot of power this year. But a 370 WOBA is nothing to laugh at. He should be able to get a couple hits today. Definitely hitting third. He's going to be in a couple spots to drive in some runs, so I definitely like Longoria too, especially where he's cheap. His price has been coming down on a lot of these sites, so if he's not one of the top price third basemen wherever you're putting rosters in today, I think he's somebody you should definitely look at. Next guy we can talk about is Steven Souza. Souza is another guy who hits lefties pretty well. He's got a 364 ISO and a 364 WOBA and a pretty big 232 ISO score. So he has some power as well and could be in a good spot today. That's basically the end of the pitchers that I'm going to be targeting today. Like I said, there's a couple guys that are pretty good that are on the mound. One other guy I want to talk about is Felix Hernandez. Now, Felix, if you look at his numbers, he's not somebody that you want to target, but he is going up against that Colorado team in Colorado, and we have seen him get blown up once or twice already this year. It's not something that I think is a high probability play, so I'm not going to be looking to target a lot of bats against him, but I do think that, there's going to be some people that are going to be targeting some of those Colorado bats, hoping that they get a Felix Hernandez blow up. Obviously, I'm not playing Felix in Colorado. I mean, I don't care if it's Clayton Kershaw, Felix Hernandez. You just don't play pitchers in Colorado. Guys always give up a few more hits, a few more runs. Their numbers are just always a little bit worse. So even if it's a stud pitcher, I still kind of shy away in Colorado. Another guy that I do kind of like today, though, and I'm not going to be targeting any bats against, is Garrett Richards. He's pretty cheap over on Fantasy Feud. I know he was one of the guys that I put in all my Feud lineups today. And if you guys don't know, you should definitely go give Fantasy Feud a look. They're running qualifiers to this big tournament. They're having a $500,000 championship, and it's only about half full. I think they're giving out about 40 seats. They filled about 20 of them so far, and they're running qualifiers at all different price points. So I think today's qualifier is a little bit pricey. It's about like a $200 qualifier, $215, I think. But the thing I like about Fantasy Feud is they run a ton of these satellites to get into these qualifiers. So they'll run like a, like a 20-man, $11 tournament that gives away a ticket, or they'll run like a 40-man, $5 tournament to give away a ticket to this thing. So if you look in the lobby, you can find a lot of these satellites. I know over at RotoCurve, we're actually running a promo code. So if you don't have a Feud account yet, go and sign up for it. When you do go sign up for it, use the promo code CURVE, and they're giving you a really big bonus for it. And also there's a bonus if you go over to the RotoCurve site and you click through our links and get in over there. I think there's also a $25 match bonus that RotoCurve is offering as well. So, now would be a great time, especially before football season. Go over there, check it out, play in some of those satellites, try to get your ticket to the qualifier, and hope that you can get a seat, because there's only 40 seats for guys playing it for $500,000. That's a lot of money to be playing for. Some of the sites don't have anywhere near as big a tournament or guarantee as that. And I think Feud is one of the few. I also like that you do 3 starting pitchers over there. It's something different. It's a whole different dynamic. And the pricing over there is pretty good. You're able to fit in a lot of the guys, that we talk about, some of these value options, which gives you enough room to fit in some of the studs that you want. So it's pretty easy to build rosters as well. Let's see some of the other pitchers we can look at today. You got Tyson Ross going up against Milwaukee. Left-handed bats have been the way to get at him, but there really aren't a lot of lefties on Milwaukee that I want to target. Adam Lind is about the one guy who stands out to me over there, and he's been banged up, so he hasn't been pitching well. Lance McCullers is going to be interesting today. He's going up against Texas. Now, he's been good against lefties and righties. He's been absolutely phenomenal so far this year. The problem I have is I don't really like to take guys pitching in Texas when the weather's nice like this, because there does tend to be more balls that fly out. And being a right-handed pitcher, you got to think some of those left-handed bats are going to be in a decent spot against them. But again, based on the numbers, I don't think anybody really truly stands out. You got guys like Moreland and Fielder, even Odor and Shin-Soo Choo. Those are the 4 lefties that you usually like to take on that Texas team. But McCullers has been basically below a 220 batting average to both sides of the plate, not giving up a ton of home runs and striking out a lot of guys. So it's not an ideal matchup that you really want to target people, but it should be a place where we see a decent amount of runs. You also have John Lester going up against Pittsburgh. Again, not somebody I'm really looking to target. Francisco Liriano going up against Chicago. There's not a lot of right-handed bats on Chicago I really want. And Corey Kluber going up against the Los Angeles Angels. Again, not a guy that I'm looking to target against. So that pretty much wraps it up today. That's all the pitchers on the mound. Like I said, there's only about a 10-game slate, so it didn't take us too long to get through it. And there's a couple guys that we're really not looking to take too many bats against. So that wraps up our Benny's Bats section for today. Thank you for joining us over here at RotoCurve. And as always, stay classy, DFS.